At the celebration banquet for the company's listing, I slapped the little secretary twice and told Nathan I wanted a divorce. He scoffed, pulling the inseparable secretary behind him, and mocked, "Sophia, are you using divorce to force me to back down? You really care about being Mrs. Nathan?" He betrayed his promise. He personally killed our child. What do I have to hold on to? I smiled brightly. "Nathan, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, whoever doesn't divorce is a dog." After another argument with Nathan over his secretary, he violently threw me against the corner of the table. Bright red blood mingled with my hair, staining half my face, sticky and dizzying. He had already slammed the door and left. He was going to save his little secretary. In order to get rid of me, he had just thrown his anger into that one motion, using all his strength. I was knocked to the ground by the sharp corner, and a sudden pain enveloped my forehead. Nathan's furious roar pierced through my heart like cold, hard ice. He said, "Sophia, how can you be so malicious? Are you satisfied if Cindy gets hurt? She is very scared right now. I promised I would be back soon. What more do you want? Just because of your boring suspicions, she has to endure such danger. If something happens, how will you take responsibility?" He said, "Sophia, you really disappoint me." Then he left me with a resolute back, not even glancing at me as I cried out in pain. The Nathan of the past would never have treated me like this. Tears rolled down in large drops as I endured the pain, struggling to crawl to the bedside to dial 120. By the time he returned home, my head was wrapped in bandages, and I had sat on the bed in silence for an entire night. He approached cautiously, the unfamiliar scent of shower gel surrounding him. I caught my breath, avoiding his embrace and pulling away the distance between us. "Sophia, I'm sorry." Cindy was frightened, and I accompanied her to report to the police. We just finished the statement. It's not easy for a girl to make her way out there. "I didn't know I had hurt you last night." He said this with a trembling voice, his eyes gradually reddening. Nathan's words were like a thin string, wrapping around my heart and tightening it. I struggled to breathe and asked the question I had pondered all night. "If you knew I was hurt, would you stay?" Nathan fell silent. Last night, his little secretary cried out for help. The reason this time was, "Nathan, I was being followed, and just now, it seemed someone pulled the power switch at home while I was showering." I was so scared. That delicate, helpless voice made my heart ache. He must have felt heartbroken for being late. So, on our wedding anniversary, he brushed me aside and ran to another woman. A secretary who has been on the job for less than half a month has a face strikingly similar to that of his deceased first love. If it weren't for that frantic call for help, I wouldn't have forgotten to lock the drawer in the study. I had no idea that during these 7 years together, he still harbored another woman in his heart. She was a girl with a pure and sweet appearance, and on the back of the photo was Nathan's neat handwriting, declaring her as his one true love. But 3 years ago, when he knelt before 3,000 Buddha statues and proposed to me under the tree of fate, he repeatedly said that his true love was me. I handed him the examination report beside me, and as he took it, I suddenly tightened my grip. "Nathan, can you fire her?" The next moment, a surprised voice erupted from him. "I'm going to be a dad." "Sophia, you've given me the greatest surprise." He bypassed my question and responded with a different kind of silence. I looked at the joy in his eyes that he couldn't hide and spoke again. "Do you remember what yesterday was?" "I had planned to tell you last night." The guilt in his eyes deepened. "Sophia, I'm sorry, I've been feeling very unsettled lately. Let's not argue anymore, okay? For our anniversary, I will make it up to you." "Who cares?" I thought to myself. A smile rose on his face. "All right, I want the most expensive gift as compensation." That evening, I received the Eternal Series jewelry he sent. He regarded this 30 million gift as an apology. His eyes, filled with deep affection, held only my reflection, and he said with intense love that he would personally choose the compensation afterward. As long as I was happy, that was all that mattered. I had a faint smile in my eyes as I casually took a picture and posted it on Facebook. Nathan's little secretary commented, "Nathan is really generous." I replied to her, "He made me angry, so he spent 30 million to cheer me up." The little secretary deleted her comment in an instant and fell silent. I insisted on sleeping in separate rooms, claiming I wasn't completely calmed down. In the past, I would sweetly tie his tie for him in the morning, and he would lean down to kiss me, to which I would shyly respond. Recently, I had been waking up late, and he thought I was experiencing pregnancy-related sleepiness. Yet, I caught glimpses through the crack of the door, watching him tie his tie all crookedly. He clearly knew how to tie it well. By dinner time, he had served me soup, and his tie was now perfectly straight and hanging neatly in front of him. I began to forget to remind him to drink less before social gatherings. The welcoming light at home was also gone. When he returned home drunk from socializing, the living room was pitch black, and the bedroom was tightly locked. There was no longer the warming soup that used to soothe him, nor the figure bustling around for him. Only then did he realize that something was quietly slipping away from his life. He cornered me, anxiously questioning, "Sophia, do you not love me anymore?" Faced with my silence, he eagerly tried to kiss me, but I turned my head away. The warmth brushed against my neck, causing me to frown slightly. I recoiled further back in rejection. He stood frozen in place, incredulously approaching again, but the disgust in my eyes choked him, rendering him speechless. After a long while, he finally managed to speak, his voice trembling and almost faint. "Sophia, don't treat me like this, please, say you love me." Nathan used to fear the day when Sophia would no longer love him. But now? I looked at him and pressed again, "Nathan, can you fire her?" His pleading steps halted, his face flushed with anger, and he coldly said, "Sophia, don't be unreasonable. She is helpless, I cannot be so cruel to her." I calmly replied with a simple good, without a hint of argument. Nathan was completely panicked. That night, after finishing an important dinner, the driver Xiao Wang helped him into the living room. I heard the sound of vomiting coming from the bathroom, and Nathan had been in there for a long time. Longer than the usual time I would spend patting his back and helping him rinse his mouth. He was waiting for me, while I was boredly playing whack-a-mole. With each thud, I silently shouted in my heart, 80, 80, 80. A moment later, there was a knock on the door. I lazily got up, turned the lock, and opened the door. The blinding light in the bedroom made Nathan briefly close his eyes. He grabbed my wrist tightly, looking hurt. "Sophia, you're not asleep?" In the light, I examined him. His shirt was clean, and there were no lipstick marks on the collar. I replied softly, and then said, "You hurt me." The grip on my wrist loosened, and Nathan leaned dejectedly against the doorframe. "Wife, I haven't had the 3 meals you used to make for me lately. My stomach issues have flared up again. I want to eat the food you cook." In the past, I felt sorry for him, going from not lifting a finger to diving into health-conscious ingredients, gradually nurturing his stomach back to health, and he hadn't had any issues since. Those old scars from burns on his hands still haven't faded. I rubbed my wrist and looked up. "I can't stand the smell of cooking oil right now." He took a step back, his tone pleading, "Plain noodle soup is fine too." But what he hated the most was plain noodle soup. It was truly a hardship for him. "I'm sorry, I've not been feeling well lately." After being rejected by me again, the corners of Nathan's eyes gradually turned red, and he softly pleaded while holding his stomach. "Then, could you make me a bowl of hangover soup?" This time, even the end of his words carried a hint of choking. I chuckled lightly and sighed, "All right." Hope ignited in his eyes, and his fingertips curled up slightly in excitement. I sidestepped past him, then deliberately stepped back to align with him, tugging at his tie and pinching a long, light brown hair strand, revealing the lipstick mark hidden beneath the tie. Nathan's complexion instantly turned pale, losing all color, and his lips trembled slightly. "It's not what you think, Sophia, let me explain. I was drunk and almost fell, she just happened to support me, and the lipstick and hair strands were accidentally gotten on me at that moment." What responded to him was the door closing against his nose, locking shut. He might think that as long as he wipes off the lipstick stained on his lips, he can cover everything up. But he doesn't know that his little secretary had already sent a Facebook message visible only to me. She even thoughtfully tagged me, afraid I wouldn't see it. In the video, the drunk in him unsteadily fell onto the sofa with the little secretary. Cindy's head just happened to bump into his chest, leaving a light orange lip print. She looked up with her sparkling eyes and said, "Brother Nathan, I don't need a title, as long as I can be by your side, I really like you." Nathan gazed obsessively at the face before him, murmuring a name, and then responded wildly. Until, suddenly, the ringing of a phone broke the moment, and the driver, Xiao Wang, respectfully inquired, pulling Nathan's consciousness back to reality. I calmly finished watching, turned off my phone, and rudely stuffed my mouth with the snacks I had hoarded for a long time, until I vomited. Nathan was still knocking on the door incessantly. I put on my headphones and continued consulting with my lawyer about the issues of these past few days. When I woke up the next day and opened the door, Nathan stumbled in directly. He had slept outside the door all night, his chin covered in stubble, and his eyes bloodshot. I had already gotten myself ready, and as I tried to pass him, he grabbed me tightly. When our eyes met, I saw the deep unease in his gaze. I brushed his hand away. "Nathan, I need to go out for a bit, let's talk about it when I get back." He quickly got up, excitedly saying, "I'll drive you." The key to his limited edition sports car dangled in front of him. "No need, I bought a car." "Use your card." His expression instantly darkened. "I told you, you are not allowed to drive anymore," he said, his voice laced with fury, blocking my way, his clenched fists turning white. Once, we had a child who died in the midst of Nathan's business rivalry with the other family. On that rainy night, the car was tampered with, and at the moment the steel bar pierced the glass, I threw myself over him, shielding the drunk in him beneath me. That time, I lay in the ICU for a month, receiving 3 notices of critical condition, and we also lost the child we had longed for. Since then, whenever I go out, he insists on personally picking me up and dropping me off without fail. I laughed, tears welling up in my smile, dripping onto Nathan's hand, making his heart tighten with warmth. Half a month ago, he took me to the hospital for a checkup, but at the moment he opened the car door, he received a phone call. In his panic, without thinking, he handed me the car keys and anxiously said, "Wife, you go to the hospital yourself. The girl I hit before has an infected wound, I need to check on her." He chose another car and drove away, leaving me behind, from a dazed expression to a pain that felt suffocating. I wiped my tears and stubbornly got into the car. But still, because of the shadow in my heart, I almost had an accident. I was blocked by an angry male driver in front of me, who was furiously banging on the hood and cursing. Crying helplessly, I wanted to call for his help, but a sweet female voice came from the other end of the line. Nathan personally went to help me schedule the scar removal surgery. I had already said it wasn't necessary, but he wouldn't listen. He said girls love to be beautiful, and if I really ended up with scars, I would be the one crying. He had just held me all the way to the checkup and casually handed me the phone. "Sister, I really envy you for having such a caring husband." I forgot how I ended the call. She said he held her all the way. But he never let any other woman get close to him except me. His phone was also off limits to other women. I confronted his pale face again. 2 weeks ago, you forgot Aunt Rong's Memorial Day, and I drove to the cemetery to pay my respects by myself. That day happened to be the day Cindy was discharged from the hospital. A week ago. Nathan gripped his hair tightly, screaming in pain, "Please, don't say that. Don't go out, okay? I really can't relax." I obediently fell silent. Then rebelliously left. He blocked me again, and I coldly replied, "Nathan, if you want me to make an unwise decision, feel free to stop me." I flew directly to Paris, the ticket was booked last night, and the return date was uncertain. Just before boarding, I received Nathan's inquiry on my phone, "Are you there? When will you be back, my wife?" After a few days of playing happily, I finally opened my phone. It was all the same, filled with Nathan's explanations and anxious inquiries. I clicked on the only video, where Cindy choked up, clarifying all the misunderstandings that had ever existed. I was brought back by Nathan. He used satellite positioning and reached Paris on the day I turned my phone on. He said that the preparations for our wedding anniversary were ready. He said, "Sophia, I will make you the envy of everyone as Mrs. Nathan." I obediently left with him, only to turn my face away forcefully when he wanted to bully me badly. He stood up in a daze and explained again, "Sophia, you have to believe me, there's really nothing between Cindy and me." I remained silent, just quietly looking at him. He advised me to rest early with a face full of hurt, then left in disappointment. On the day of the banquet, Nathan spent a fortune on an eternal love necklace as a gift for our wedding anniversary. A necklace worth 90 million, only a fool would refuse it out of spite. I accompanied him to greet the guests, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. If it weren't for his little secretary ruining the mood, I think everyone would believe that Nathan was deeply in love with me. Cindy committed suicide, and when Nathan received the news, she had already been taken to the hospital. He pried my fingers off his sleeve and said coldly, "Sophia, this is not the time for your selfishness, that is a life. How can you be so selfish?" He hurriedly left and didn't return home until late at night, exhausted. The bedroom was illuminated, and he gently pushed the door open, walking over to my side, where I lay asleep, my face stained with tears. He carefully took the phone from my palm and stared at the content with a furrowed brow. Before committing suicide, Cindy asked me a question, "Tell me, in Nathan's heart, who is more important, you or me?" I didn't reply. Then came the picture of Nathan holding her tightly, filled with concern, alongside the provocative words she had sent. "I see, you are nothing more than that. He is willing to spend money on you, but he is willing to give his heart to me. In front of everyone, he abandoned you and rushed to comfort me." When he saw me awake, the look in his eyes was one of loss and recovery, something you will never understand. "If I sold this photo to the media, do you think you would become a laughingstock?" Nathan used some means to buy the photo from the paparazzi, preserving my last shred of dignity. Then he sent someone to slap Cindy hard, which was already the limit. Yet, he still couldn't bring himself to dismiss her, even though I had suffered so much. He quickly drafted the contract and handed me a pen when I woke up in the morning. "Sophia, Cindy is just a child's mischief, don't take her seriously. I only see her as a sister. Once she calms down, I will push her away immediately. I have already made her give up on what she shouldn't desire. I only love you." He transferred 50% of the company's shares to my name, essentially handing over his lifeline to me. This showed his sincerity. I accepted the shares but remained indifferent. What he didn't know was that the tears were for my drops. The chat records were intentionally shown to him. The rest depended entirely on his conscience. I accompanied him in building everything from scratch, living in a dark and damp basement. I saved most of a bag of instant noodles under the pretext of dieting, letting him eat the majority. I stayed up late writing plans for him, accompanying him as he rushed around. I felt completely justified in taking these shares. The company recently landed a big contract, and Nathan was extremely busy. He squeezed out time every day to check on me. It wasn't until the end, when the company successfully went public, that he finally had time to specifically comfort me. He even rejected calls from Cindy. Gradually, I began to smile at him, and he was so happy he seemed lost, lowering his head to look at the novel I held up in front of him. When Nathan saw his husband betray his pregnant wife, and the wife aborted their 6-month-old fetus, sending it to the husband's company, his face turned pale as paper once again. He hired a nanny for me, who followed me closely, and arranged for 2 children's rooms to be set up, one for a boy and one for a girl. They were filled with cute baby photos and various toys. He kept brainwashing me with dreams of how happy life would be after having a baby. Just as he was immersed in this, his mood reaching its peak, he suddenly received an anonymous package. Inside was the report of my irregular menstrual cycle. The date was from the day before yesterday. The nanny hesitated and finally showed him the blood-stained tissue from the bathroom. It was then that Nathan realized I had deceived him. After receiving my affirmative answer, he smashed everything in the room. Then he gripped my chin and questioned in a low voice, "You know how much I long for our child, how could you bear to deceive me with a pregnancy? Just to make Cindy leave? But I refuse to do as you wish." I forced a bitter smile. "Child, how could I not long for it? The mountains of bitter herbal medicine, the nauseating folk remedies, and the endless needles." I pushed back the moisture in my eyes, watching him pull out his phone to buy a villa for Cindy. He also had the latest silk pajamas of the season sent over, and then he didn't come home all night. The news of my marriage breakdown with Nathan spread quickly, and his intimate photos with Cindy frequently topped the trending searches. The lovesick CEO sought a new romance. Nathan bought a mountaintop villa for his secretary. Once a beloved wife, now reduced to a discarded woman. At the celebration banquet for the company's IPO, Nathan sent a driver to pick me up for the event. In the flickering lights, Cindy, dressed in haute couture and adorned with exquisite makeup and expensive jewelry around her neck, exuded an air of luxury. She affectionately linked arms with Nathan, chatting with others, while Nathan's palm naturally rubbed against Cindy's waist. When I appeared, the surrounding noise suddenly fell silent, and an acquaintance tried to ease the tension. "Mrs. Nathan, you look even more beautiful after not seeing you for a while." I nodded and smiled, replying, "I can't accept the title of Mrs. Nathan, I'm here to discuss divorce with Nathan." Everything around became even quieter. I walked up to Cindy and slapped her hard across the face twice. Nathan shielded Cindy behind him, mocking, "Sophia, to force me to compromise, you actually resort to threatening me with divorce? Are you really willing to give up the title of Mrs. Nathan? There should be a limit to this game of cat and mouse. If you regret it now, it can still be salvaged." I handed him a divorce agreement with my signature already on it. Nathan crumpled the paper in his hand, staring at me without blinking. "Sophia, we can discuss this privately." I raised the bag in my hand, smiling brightly. "Nathan, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, whoever doesn't divorce is a dog." That report about my irregular period was sent to Cindy by me. How could I possibly backtrack? I kept looking at this statement, and it wasn't as painful as I had imagined. It turns out that after falling out of love, it can be this easy. While he hurt me time and again for another woman, I forced myself to slowly dissipate my love for him and prepared to withdraw completely. The next day, at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Nathan rubbed his forehead as if he hadn't slept all night. "Sophia, you deceived me first. As long as you are willing to bow your head, the position of the lady will always be yours. Besides me, you have no other relatives. The only one you can rely on is me." I scoffed, brushing the hair from my cheek behind my ear. "Nathan, isn't it better to be a good person? Why must you act like a dog?" After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, I ignored the gaze following me and headed straight to a high-end restaurant, ordering the most expensive set meal to celebrate my single status. That night, after preparing a bath, the trending topic insulting me had reached its peak. I pulled my suitcase and boarded the plane to Country M, posting the chat screenshots along with the video online. Those knives aimed at me would eventually backfire on their instigator. The glaring evidence instantly stirred up a storm online. The trending topics insulting Cindy kept emerging, and Nathan could not escape condemnation either. "Look, this is the internet. Just a moment ago, those who were unaware of the truth were cursing me mercilessly. At this moment, they transformed into righteous defenders, standing up for me." At the mountaintop villa, Nathan tossed aside the delivery he had received. A small box and a document bag. But he had no time to care. The cat, having stolen a taste, was finally ready to savor the cheese at its lips. Cindy tenderly loosened his tie, whispering, "Brother Nathan." In the dead of night, drenched in sweat, Nathan got up, and the moment his feet hit the floor, he kicked the delivery. He bent down to pick it up and walked into the bathroom. He thought that as long as he vented his anger through other means, he would feel happy. But things did not go as planned. Now, he was filled with a restless desire to destroy everything. For Cindy, he had been so infatuated for so long, caught in a web of ambiguity, nearly driven mad. But now that he had her, the once burning desire had cooled to freezing point, leaving only endless emptiness. After what felt like a release while discussing with Cindy, his mind was filled with the fear of Sophia leaving him. He absent-mindedly tore open the package, pulling out the papers inside. The next moment, in a panic, he yanked open the bathroom door he had bumped into, stumbling down the stairs, opening the car door, and flooring the accelerator. The car sped down the highway. He had to see his Sophia. He needed to see his Sophia immediately. Nathan drove to the villa where I lived. It was empty, all the furniture we had chosen together had disappeared, and all traces of my life had been erased. He searched desperately, his heart feeling hollow, wanting to call me, only to find that his phone had died and shut off. He returned to the car and plugged in the charger. As soon as he turned it on, a call came in. It was the manager of the public relations department. "Nathan, your video with Miss Cindy is trending and cannot be suppressed. Someone is manipulating things behind the scenes at any cost." Nathan opened Facebook and his pupils jolted when he saw the still image from the video. It was that night when Cindy cried and said she was being followed. When he rushed over, the apartment was bright, and Cindy threw herself into his arms, her cool attire enchanting, looking at him with a pitiful gaze, expressing her love. In a daze, he leaned down to kiss her, but in the end, he stopped himself with reason. He wiped away Cindy's tears and comforted her. "You remind me so much of my first love. I can't bear to put you in an awkward position. Besides, Sophia has suffered a lot with me." Yet in the end, he still allowed her to seek his affection in another way. A game that he had tried to entice Sophia into, but she refused. At that time, he thought that what Sophia was unwilling to do for him, Cindy would willingly embrace because she loved him. The inflation of his masculinity made that first experience particularly pleasurable. So much so that in the following encounters, it happened in an empty office. He held a high position, looking down at Cindy. He indulged her reckless exploration before the bottom line, even allowing her to sink into it. The sound that entered his ears startled him awake. He hurriedly exited the video, shutting off the heavy breathing from it. His hand reached into his pocket, where Sophia's miscarriage report lay, a spontaneous abortion that happened to coincide with that night. He read through the messages sent to him by the PR manager one by one. They were all provocations from Cindy towards Sophia. From the 6th day after he collided with Cindy. Every word felt like a knife, slicing into his flesh. Until he saw one particular message, his eyes reddened, and he punched the windshield, shattering it. Glass shards embedded into his flesh, blood flowing in streams. On the night Sophia miscarried, while he was cleaning, Cindy sent the video to Sophia. Overwhelming panic engulfed him, and his heart felt a tearing pain in an instant. He personally killed the flesh and blood he had longed for day and night. He felt as if he was dying from the pain. He had witnessed all the suffering Sophia endured to give him life. He slammed his hands against the steering wheel, letting the blood flow freely, letting the flesh become a blur. It seemed that only in this way could he soothe the overwhelming pain in his heart. He had to find Sophia, no matter what, to seek her forgiveness, even if it meant using any means necessary to keep her by his side. When he returned to the villa on the mountaintop, his expression was as calm as water, and he carefully examined the sleeping Cindy. He pulled a sharp shard of glass from his palm and drew it from her left temple down to the right corner of her mouth. But facing this face, he ultimately could not bring himself to do it. He felt as if he was about to go mad from the torment. Finally, he took out his phone and sent a message to someone he knew, who can provide information about Sophia. "I am willing to exchange anything for it." Suddenly, he thought of something, quickly walked to the corner, his hands trembling uncontrollably from panic. He slowly crouched down and opened the cardboard box. When he saw what was inside, his once calm eyes turned red and piercing once again. Cindy was awakened by Nathan's roar. The next moment, a powerful hand grabbed her hair and threw her out of the villa. No matter how much she pounded and asked, all she received in return was a furious, "Get out." She stared coldly at the tightly closed door, a smirk curling at the corners of her lips as she mocked, "Nathan, do you want to get rid of me? Dream on." At the airport exit of Country M, a group of bodyguards blocked another group behind them, respectfully taking the suitcase from my hands. They forcibly escorted me away. A man with a clear and handsome face leaned against the body of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, gentlemanly opening the passenger door. The car drove towards Manhattan's Broadway, extending to a street by the East River, a place of paper dreams and golden splendor on Wall Street. Inside the car, Sam gradually moved closer, casting a shadow over me. The partition was lowered at the right moment, and he fiercely kissed my lips, holding my resistance tightly with one hand. Nathan's first love is deceased, while my first love is still alive and watching closely. The car stopped in front of the hotel, and by this time, my shirt was disheveled, my hands tightly bound by Sam. He wrapped me in his suit jacket, bent down to carry me out of the car, and leaned in to whisper with a wicked smile in my ear. "Baby, you can scream for help, and then let everyone come to watch. Just thinking about it is thrilling." I was furious and shouted, "Despicable, filthy, shameless dog." Sam's dominance has always been unmatched, especially towards me. The elevator shot straight up, and when it opened, my lips were slightly swollen, and I had bitten Sam's mouth corner. The presidential suite on the top floor. He raised my hands above my head and pressed them hard against the wall. "Sophia, this time it was you who provoked me. I said that as long as you set foot in America, I would never let go again." There was a loud knocking at the door. He casually grabbed a water cup and smashed it against the door, immediately followed by a mechanical and respectful voice from outside. "Young master, the old man asked me to convey this." "You bastard. Bring Miss Sophia back to me intact. If I have to wipe your ass one more time, I'll block your eyes." Then came the sound of the cup shattering on the floor. This message was not an ordinary scene reenactment. A few minutes later, Sam collected the interest before taking me out of the room. My biological mother rushed over and slapped me hard. With one slap on each side, Sam's face finally became symmetrical. I felt much better in my heart. The beautiful woman, who resembled me, had tears welling up in her eyes. "Sophia, Mom and Dad really know they were wrong. When I was 14, my mother, who either beat or scolded me, was on the verge of death. She repented, cursed herself, and had someone secretly deliver letters to the Song family. This former mate of the Song family only wished to see her biological daughter once. At that time, the adopted daughter was also diagnosed with a terminal illness, with no more than 2 years to live. The last meeting between mother and daughter was under the pretense of a farewell. Mother Song saw me covered in scars and wept as she held me. Father Song clenched his fists, making them crack. In the end, they left Aunt Rome behind, filled with guilt. "Sophia, Kitty has only a little over a year left, she can't handle the stress. We will make it up to you later." There was no prior notice or discussion, just a casual notification as they were leaving. After hearing this, I suppressed my longing for family ties and calmly replied, "Uncle, Auntie, take care." Then I watched as Father Song, like a loving father, carried Kitty on his back, while Mother Song tenderly smoothed Kitty's hair and draped a coat over her. Then she said to me, "Sophia, listen to Aunt Rome." Later, when their daughter passed away, they wanted to reclaim me, but I resolutely refused. Even at the mere sight of them, I would silently resist by refusing to eat. Over the years, they cautiously walked on the edge, pouring all the compensations I rejected into Nathan's company. My inbox was piled high with their heartfelt confessions and deep longings. I finally let go of my emotional knots and agreed to the reunion in America, but was hindered by a marital crisis. "Mom," the stiff and awkward address caused Mother Song's tears to burst forth. It also allowed me, who had drifted like a floating weed since birth, to take root. She once again held me tightly in her arms, weeping, murmuring various confessions. When we reached downstairs, Father Song was nervously pacing back and forth. Until that Dad slipped out, "Oh. Oh. Oh." He responded joyfully, and the frown on his face was finally swept away. Tears streamed down his face as he stepped forward, unsure where to place his hands. "My dear daughter, I'm sorry you've suffered. Let's go home, Dad will cook for you and make you something delicious." He smiled as he escorted me and Mother Song to the car, then turned back to Sam, who was leaning against the car door. With one punch, he knocked Sam out cold. "You little brat, if you bully my daughter again, I'll have your father break your legs." Sam grinned and said, "Uncle, for the rest of my life, Sophia can only be my wife." This farce ended with my call of "Dad, I'm hungry." 4 months later, on my trip back home, I had an unshakable tail following me. In 3 months, Sam had been driven away by bodyguards several times. He was beaten up 3 times for climbing over walls in the middle of the night. He proposed to me 8 times, once every 10 days. The one time he cornered me in the fitting room of Saks Fifth Avenue, trying to take advantage, he ended up getting beaten up by his father and couldn't get out of bed. Sam's dad, full of apologies, led us into a room. After we came out, my parents reluctantly accepted Sam's antics with a hint of sympathy. After returning to the country, Nathan was frantically looking for me. I kept my itinerary hidden. Until that banquet, when I took the opportunity to go to the bathroom to touch up my makeup, I was cornered by Sam in the hallway, kissing me recklessly. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps behind me, and a heavy punch struck Sam's mouth, drawing blood from the corner. It was Nathan, whom I hadn't seen for 4 months. At that moment, he was no longer the spirited person he used to be. Despair had taken over him, leaving only an undeniable emaciation. He grabbed my sleeve, humbly pleading, "Sophia, will you come back to me?" I pried his fingers apart, my tone laced with sarcasm. "Nathan, a qualified ex should be as good as dead." "What? The excitement brought by your little secretary isn't enough for you anymore?" His complexion was pale once again, and regret flashed in his eyes. "Sophia, I was wrong. Please don't leave me. You love me so much, can you give me another chance?" he pleaded. "I've already fired Cindy and completely cut ties with her. I finally found you, and this time I won't let go easily." How could I let him not find me? After all, he had bought this information from my secretary for 5% of his shares. Faced with his overwhelming regret, I sighed again. "Fine, I'll give you another chance." My wrist was yanked hard, and Sam's veins bulged at his temples as he gritted his teeth and threatened, "Sophia, if you dare to take back the trash, you'll bear the consequences tonight. At worst, I'll be beaten to death by the old man, but I won't allow you to get back together with him." I ignored the crazed Sam. Instead, I met Nathan's anxious yet hopeful gaze. "Nathan, do you dare to swear that you and Cindy are really completely done?" Nathan hesitated for a moment, then extended 3 fingers. "I swear to the heavens, if I lie to you, I won't have a good death." I chuckled lightly and nodded. "All right, I believe your oath. But, 43, Sakura Road. Yesterday, it seems you just went to see her." "Nathan, it looks like I should wish you an early death and rebirth in advance. Remember to notify me for the offering." A hint of panic flashed in Nathan's eyes as he stepped forward. "Sophia, let me explain." Sam shielded me behind him, looking coldly at Nathan. "She is my girlfriend now, and from now on, you and your dog are forbidden to come near her." I dragged the fist-fighting Sam away, leaving Nathan's howls and excuses behind us. Nathan now really looks like a madman. I didn't expect him to follow me to the hotel and knock on the door at 2 in the morning. I irritably opened the door, my tone icy. "Nathan, if you're sick, go take your medicine. What are you going crazy about in the middle of the night?" His knocking posture froze. Upon seeing the splash of crimson at my collar, he radiated an aura of destruction. "You slept with him?" He clenched his fists, suppressing his anger. I chuckled lightly. "What, do I need to report my affairs to you, my ex-husband?" He seemed unable to bear such a blow, his body swaying slightly. Then he punched the wall beside him, a cracking sound escaping through his teeth. "Sophia, can we call it even? I only had one encounter with Cindy after our divorce. You and him, I can convince myself not to care." I reminded him, "Nathan, it was I who didn't want you. I no longer love you, what do you have to compare with him? I might get engaged to him and then marry him, while you will forever be the murderer of my child and the accomplice who sheltered the mastermind." I turned to close the door, but heard a thud behind me. The once high and mighty CEO, now kneeling, humbly pleading. "I truly know I was wrong, we will have children in the future. Sophia, losing you will drive me mad. I can be your lover. As long as you don't leave me, even if it means a lifetime of being nameless and unrecognized, I am willing." He broke down all his pride just to earn a glance back from me. Unfortunately, it was too late. I turned around and yanked him up from the ground, using all my strength to slap my slender palm across his face. It wasn't until I was out of breath that I managed to release the anger that had built up in my chest. I flipped through the photo album and held up a picture in front of him, who was at my mercy to be scolded and beaten. In the photo, Cindy's face is beaming with a happy smile, nestled in Nathan's embrace. Nathan gently caresses Cindy's slightly rounded belly. He personally killed our child, yet allowed the instigator to bear his flesh and blood. Now he wants to be my lover, how ironic. Nathan, you truly make me feel disgusted. Be my lover? What about your little secretary? What about the child in her belly? I played a voice message. Brother Nathan, the names Alma and Tom are both so nice. It would be great if it were twins, then we could use the names you worked so hard to come up with. A familiar male voice replied, "That's great, I would be very happy with just one. Thank you for bringing him into this world." I wiped away the tears on my face, my eyes filled with hatred. Nathan, I once carried 2 lives, but I lost them both because of you. You spent your energy coming up with good names for them, and just like that, you gave them to someone else. Get away, and don't ever show up in front of me again. Nathan desperately held the door I was trying to close, screaming in pain. Sophia, I haven't touched Cindy since that one time after the divorce. I never expected she could get pregnant in one go. The child is innocent, and you, having been a mother, should be more magnanimous. She is just the mother of my child now. After giving birth, she will leave forever. Losing our child is tearing my heart apart. I just see this new life as a continuation of the lives of those 2 children. Nathan's words pierced my heart like a cold, hard steel needle. The cold wind rushed in, and my eyes felt so sore I could hardly blink. Magnanimous? A continuation of life? The door across from me was suddenly flung open. Sam rushed in and knocked Nathan to the ground with a punch. He looked at me with concern, while I stared blankly ahead. The words buzzed in my ears, magnanimous? A continuation of life. He held my wrist tightly, his voice gentle as he guided me. Sophia, wake up, I know you can do it. You still have loved ones around you, and you have me. What you have lost will one day return to you in another form. The voices that had appeared countless times in my mind, like a thin thread, gradually pulled my consciousness back. My eyes slowly regained clarity. I looked at the confused and worried Nathan. Are you leaving or not? He took a step forward. Sophia, I won't leave. Why won't you give me another chance? Huh, so you're not leaving, huh? Who can't kill with words? I stood on my tiptoes and kissed Sam's lips, pulling him back into the room. The door was closed once again, and this time, faint sounds came from inside. It wasn't until dawn that it gradually calmed down. I gave myself to Sam as he wished. Nathan's eyes were bloodshot, having not slept all night. He clearly told himself that he could not care, but in the end, he still broke down, kicking the door and fleeing in despair from the piercing sounds inside. He finally understood how much pain Sophia had endured. He truly deserved to die, 1,000 cuts would not be enough. In the room, empty wine bottles were scattered everywhere, and the doorbell rang repeatedly. Nathan propped himself up and dejectedly opened the door to find 2 packages, both addressed from Sophia. A glimmer of hope ignited in his heart as he eagerly tore open the one marked as number 1. A few minutes later, papers and photos were strewn across the floor. Dale was the name of his first love. The information showed that when he was destitute, his pure and innocent girlfriend had long since attached herself to a wealthy heir. She became pregnant, was forced to have an abortion, and was ultimately abandoned after being cheated on, yet she humbly clung on, trying to salvage the relationship. But Dale had deceived him, telling him that her family disapproved of her being with a poor boy like him. She asked him to find a way to gather the betrothal gifts to prove his intentions. He sold the house left by his parents and handed $300,000 to Dale. However, Dale used that money to book a plastic surgery, hoping to win back the heart of the wealthy heir by becoming beautiful. Dale died the day before the surgery. After seeing the once-promised wealthy heir being intimate with a new love, she, disheartened, jumped into the river. Before she died, she left a message: "My parents still don't allow us to be together, but I just want to be your bride. Nathan, see you in the next life." In one sentence, she clarified the reason for her death. It also made him, for all these years, feel like a clown, self-pitying and collapsing in guilt. And until her death, Dale had been covering for that man. He trembled as he opened another package. Moments later, he crumpled the papers inside into a ball and picked them up to tear apart. Cindy, Dale's cousin, was a carefully orchestrated deception from the very beginning of their acquaintance. To cling to him, she abandoned her boyfriend who had supported her through college. After being thrown out of the mountaintop villa, she went back to her ex-boyfriend and checked into hotels with him. He picked up an empty wine bottle from the floor and smashed it against the wall until the room was in disarray. For such a woman, he lost his beloved and caused the death of his own flesh and blood. He slapped himself hard, the overwhelming pain making him bang his head against the wall. I glanced at the text message confirming the successful delivery of the package. These two pieces of information had been uncovered long before my miscarriage. Originally, the lawyer had advised me to gather evidence of his infidelity. I didn't expect that investigating Cindy would lead to this big catch. So, I changed my mind. Rather than leaving with nothing, it would be more satisfying to see Nathan enjoy happiness while falling into hell. Sam wrapped his arms around my waist from behind and pulled me into his embrace. "Sophia, I told my dad to set a date to discuss our marriage with Uncle and Aunt. You have to testify for me about last night. You were the one who tempted me first." I turned around, suppressing a smile, buried my face in his chest, feeling the warmth radiating from him, and softly replied, "All right, as you wish." Sam acquired a domestic company and insisted that I be his executive assistant. He bought the company to annoy Nathan and create trouble for him. I was too lazy to get involved, just warning him that I was a major shareholder of the Sunran Group and to not go too far. During a subsequent visit to the company, I noticed a strange cleaner. She wore a large mask every day and always avoided eye contact when looking at me. She would also silently follow me to the restroom and clean the floor behind me. This time, I deliberately slowed my pace and accidentally stepped on her foot. She cried out in pain, her voice hoarse and unpleasant. I looked at her familiar eyes and pulled off her mask. It was an unremarkable face, with a long scar extending from the corner of her mouth to her ear. I kept apologizing, having made a blunder, feeling deeply guilty towards her. Sam, upon learning of this, took the initiative to give her a raise and comforted me not to feel too guilty. Recently, he had been competing with Nathan for a proposal that was very important to Nathan. But on the day of the bidding, Nathan's proposal was similar to Sam's, yet superior. That night, the situation took a turn. Sam's company was robbed, and the perpetrator was that cleaner. The cleaner was caught on video making a deal with the project manager of Nathan's company, and the footage went viral online. After Sam reported it, the cleaner fled in fear of being caught. Nathan's company's stock was affected, plummeting steadily. My parents had stopped supporting Nathan's company long before my divorce. Currently, his company's financial chain was on the verge of breaking. To make matters worse, there was another major news story in Haicheng. The Song family, living overseas, planned to relocate part of their business back to the country. The only statement they made was a refusal to cooperate with the Liu family. The police were still searching for the missing cleaner. Until the night I returned home alone, when someone lunged at me with a gleaming dagger. Nathan rushed out and stood in front of me, the dagger pierced his abdomen, and blood flowed everywhere. The killer was subdued by the ambushing police, and the unconscious Nathan was taken to the hospital. I went to see the killer, who could also be called Cindy, the cleaner. She cursed madly, screaming in pain. "I hate you, I was so close to succeeding. Nathan has been thinking about you, even freezing the disgusting things you sent him in the freezer. After sleeping with me, he kicked me out of the villa, so I got pregnant to trap him. When I went to find him with my belly, you have no idea how happy he was. But in the end, it was because of you. The moment you returned, he became a different person. He personally took me to the hospital, and when I woke up, my appearance had changed, the baby was gone, and I was driven out of the apartment. Wasn't he supposed to love my cousin the most? I originally looked 70% like my cousin and even spent money to make myself look exactly like her for him. Why did he turn me into this hideous version?" I chuckled lightly. "Want to know why he treated you this way?" Cindy's eyes were fixed on me like a vulture. I lazily leaned back in my chair and looked back at her. "It was me who sent him some information, letting him know you are Dale's cousin. Letting him know about your plastic surgery, letting him know about your cousin's betrayal. Your ex-boyfriend had sent me your current appearance early on in exchange for some money. He said it was compensation for all those years of sincere feelings wasted. Sam and I were just accompanying you in a play." Cindy completely went mad. In the end, she was sentenced to prison for theft and intentional injury. And I sold Nathan's company's stocks to a strong competitor, giving him a big surprise upon his discharge. My wedding with Sam took place in a charming little town church. My father handed me over to Sam, his eyes moist with various warnings and threats. My mother shed tears in the audience, only to be amused by Sam's wedding vows in the end. His wedding vow was, "I will work hard to hold 2 babies in a year. I will notarize all my property to my wife. Every day, I must wash my wife's feet, massage her back, and serve her in bed." Sam's father nodded with tears in his eyes. "How did I raise such a shameless child? When we get home, I need to prepare the washboard for Sophia." After the wedding, I inherited my parents' company and was busy every day, while also enduring Sam's insatiable desires. I never expected the vow to come true. When I saw the 2 little lives on the examination report, I locked myself in my room, tears streaming down my face. In this room, I had once collapsed into a half-mad state from losing them. Now that they have returned to my side, it is a blessing from heaven and the best gift Sam has given me. The door was knocked, and Sam walked in, embracing me. "Sophia, I told you, what you have lost will one day return to you in another form. Look, today we have both fulfilled that promise." Sam has an old notebook. In the year we broke up, it was signed, "At the darkest moment of my life, I lost my life." And when we reunited, he added, "Grateful to the heavens for their mercy, they have returned her to my side." Sam's perspective. The first time I heard of Sophia was when her father, drunk, cried to my dad that his own daughter would rather starve to death than acknowledge him. I picked up the fallen photograph from the ground, captivated by the girl in the picture. After Sophia's father sobered up, he searched everywhere, while I had already hidden the photo under my pillow. Our families had an engagement, and I once caused a ruckus at home because I wanted to break off the engagement. It wasn't until Kitty fell ill that both sides tacitly fell into silence. As for Sophia, hiding my wife's photo didn't seem embarrassing. I successfully forced my dad to send me back to high school in my home country. The hunger strike really worked. My dad said that Sophia and I were a match made in heaven. Starving myself drove him crazy. I thought he made a lot of sense. So when I encountered her in the crowd, I launched a fierce pursuit. She ignored my flowers, breakfast, reserved seats, and expensive gifts. Instead, it was because I burned my hands making her a meal that her frozen heart was pried open a crack. Later, a girl bully from her school, jealous of her popularity with boys, spread rumors about her, claiming she was an illegitimate child born from an affair. I kicked the rumormonger and broke their rib. Sophia was enraged by that remark that should not see the light of day, and she yanked a crescent-shaped chunk of hair from that female bully. I touched my own tingling scalp and felt that we were more suited for each other. That time of being warned together, standing in punishment, and reflecting on our actions directly pulled our relationship closer. I skipped classes to capture the most beautiful stars for her and the morning beauty of the sunrise from the mountaintop. I changed my bad habits for her and worked hard to catch up on my studies. Finally, during one of her birthday celebrations, I folded 1,314 paper cranes for her, each piece of paper inscribed with, "Sophia, I love you." I found 1,314 students, and each one unfolded a paper crane to surround her in the center, shouting loudly, "Sophia, he loves you." That time, she chuckled and said, "Sam, I will accept your confession on the day of our high school graduation." I was as happy as a madman, wishing I could open my eyes and find it was graduation day. Since then, not a single opposite-sex animal has appeared by Sophia's side. It was me who drove them away. I couldn't stand others' covetous gazes on her. During those previous days, I was so angry I was almost going mad. Until that time when I picked her up from her part-time job and found her being harassed by thugs on the roadside, when that man forcibly kissed Sophia. I rushed up like a madman and beat him half to death. In that moment of bloodshed, I surprisingly felt a sense of exhilaration and a boiling restlessness. Later, I began to wake up in the early morning, seeing the lit screen and the text messages on my phone. It was Sophia's number, filled with ugly insults. Fortunately, I hadn't clicked send. Unfortunately, I had no memory of that moment at all. I started to fall into panic and anxiety, leading to sleepless nights. Finally, on the night before graduation, Sophia saw with her own eyes me and that female school bully in a hotel room. The message was sent by me personally, or rather, by another version of myself. I could clearly hear the hurtful words coming out of my mouth, yet I couldn't control myself. That was the first time I saw her in tears, then she left without looking back. I plunged the fruit knife from the coffee table into my thigh with all my might, then cut open my palm to reveal the bone, finally reclaiming control of my body. I staggered and bled all the way to search for her trace. But she seemed to have vanished. Even her graduation certificate was collected by someone else. I went back to M Country to see a psychologist. The doctor said I had a dual personality. Under my persistent questioning, he said that only by killing the other personality could I regain control of my body. But the risk was immense. I could lose my own personality and be replaced by the other one. Yet for Sophia, I wanted to fight for it. The doctor said that if I wanted to implement this, I must not delay for a moment. But I still returned to my country and found Sophia. I forcibly took her, who was coldly resisting, onto a private plane. That time, my father's close friend, Sophia's father, for the first time because of me, had a falling out with my dad. He also issued a stern warning that if I got close to Sophia again, only one of the Scher family and the Song family would remain. I saw my father turn gray overnight, and he finally made a promise that as long as she did not set foot in America, I would never disturb her life. That day I bought a notebook that I scoffed at. I wrote down words blurred by tears. In the darkest moment of my life, I lost my life. After losing Sophia, my only space was a lightless room. I chained myself with thick iron chains and tried every possible method. When I couldn't bear it any longer, I would cut my finger and write Sophia's name on the wall. Then I would lean my body tightly against it to ease the longing. Until the last attempt, I was almost killed by another personality. I fell into despair and began to self-destruct. I secretly poured out the food sent through the small window every day and cut off all sources of water. When I was on the brink of death, the instinct to survive made me drink my own urine. In a brief moment of losing consciousness and waking up, I saw the soft words of another personality. He said he had obsessive-compulsive disorder and begged me not to drink the thing that drove him to collapse. This message saved me. I spent the whole night in a mental struggle, treating myself as a supply for life. Then I completely killed him. Perhaps I will never be able to let go of this experience. But compared to losing Sophia, these are nothing. It was only after I recovered that I realized Sophia was already with someone else. I looked at the photo of her struggling alongside another man, filled with jealousy and bitterness. But when I saw her smiling face, I decided to let her go to the person who brought her happiness. Until I heard the news of her divorce and move abroad, I knew this was the only chance I had in this lifetime to win her back. After another outburst from Sophia's father, my dad led them into that room. From then on, Sophia returned to the way she used to be, even showing me more tolerance. And when I secretly went to see her sleeping at night, I noticed something was wrong with her. At first, she would cry in her sleep, then she would hold a stuffed toy while crying in her sleep. Finally, she would sleepwalk in the room, calling out, "Baby, mommy is sorry for you." I went to ask the psychologist from back then. He said Sophia is an emotionally repressed patient. People with this personality, if someone they care about wrongs them, will tear apart their emotions and reorganize them to lessen the harm to themselves. Then gradually, they become indifferent to that person, as a way to protect themselves. But if one represses their guilt towards others, they may become trapped in their own sense of guilt, unable to escape. I told the doctor's words to Sophia's dad and mom. Sophia's dad collapsed to the ground in self-reproach, while Sophia's mom fainted from crying. And I dug my nails deep into my palm. We had all hurt Sophia at some point. The doctor's advice was to take her out for walks, to help her mood and give her no time to overthink. Avoid mentioning anything about the baby in front of her. Under our careful care, Sophia's condition gradually improved. But heaven is unfair, after a child passed directly by Sophia and lost their life under a car. Sophia raised her hand to stop it and fell into madness. I brought her back to my villa, talking to her through sleepless nights fueled by coffee, trying to awaken her. Finally, when my voice was nearly gone, I completely brought her back to consciousness. After sleeping for 3 days and nights, I woke up to see Sophia anxiously waiting. That night, I dug out a dusty notebook and signed it. I am grateful to heaven for its mercy, for bringing her back to my side. After marriage, I welcomed the fruit of our lives, Sophia and me. I held her in my arms as she cried and said to her, "Sophia, I told you, what you have lost will one day return to you in another form. Look, we have both fulfilled that now." I felt the softness of her in my embrace. I will never tell her that I secretly threw away more than 100 letters from Nathan, filled with his confessions and pleas to keep her. I also repeatedly stopped Nathan from going abroad to find her. Since he misses Sophia so much, I decided to send him more of our sweet photos. I already told Nathan that Sophia is mine now, and he and the dog are not allowed to come near her. But he didn't believe me.